The next morning, I woke up about 8 hours later. My wife was there. The doctors were there. How are you feeling? I'm feeling okay. I said, did I puke up any more blood? No, no. It was everything was successful. And I looked at my wife. I said, I can't feel my legs. I can't move.
Harry, how did you find Carnivore?
There's that trademark question. Thank you, Dave, for inviting me on. Well, I'm new at carnivore. I've only been eating carnivore now for exactly 95 days. Um, and the reason I started it is because I had out of control type 2 diabetes. And I tried a lot of different things. I was on insulin injections every day. The metformin I couldn't take from the very beginning because it gave me stomach troubles and diarrhea. So they put me on a medication, an oral medication called Janumet. And that's the predecessor, I think, to the current ones that are being prescribed. But it's much lower dosage. It's like 1/10 of the dosage of Ozempic, maybe even 1/100th. That worked for a period of time. But as I continued to eat uncontrollably, addictively, um, anything I wanted and when I wanted it, uh, that's I continue to see my A1C elevate. Now I have to kind of start from a little bit of background. Um, I grew up in a small southeastern Pennsylvania town in a pretty poor family and in an area that was pretty dang rough. The city was broken up into wards, and we lived in the seventh ward, and everybody else in the city used to call that the Bloody Seven. There was a lot of crime, a lot of low income people, a lot of addicted people, mentally ill, you name it. So, as a kid, I used to run the neighborhoods and run into all kinds of trouble and got beat up a lot. And wasn't until I was about 14 years old that I really started saying, I'm tired of getting my ass kicked. And I started fighting back, and I got good at it. And what I recognized was every time I was in fear of getting beat up and I engaged in a fight, I had this adrenaline pump. And the adrenaline was addictive. I became addicted to adrenaline. I loved it. I loved that feeling of power. I loved that feeling of excitement. And that has permeated my entire life. Um, fast forward, I graduated from high school at age 17, and I come from a Scots-Irish German ancestry, and we Scots-Irish, we hold grudges pretty well. And my father was a World War II veteran. All of my uncles were World War II veterans. I'm 78 years old, incidentally. My father, he served at the Battle of the Bulge. And my uncle landed at Iwo Jima. One other uncle was in Italy in the United States Army. The one that landed at Iwo Jima was a United States Marine. So at age 17, I had a lot of family heritage that I needed to kind of upkeep. So I joined the United States Marine Corps at age 17. My father had to sign for me because I was below 18 years old, and immediately recognized that the United States Marine Corps valued certain things: the ability to fight, the ability to endure a lot of pain and the ability to drink alcohol. So I immediately fell right into that role. And I graduated from boot camp in 1965. And at that time, the Vietnam War was just starting up and getting underway. And I started volunteering to go to war. I served with people who had, in the Marine Corps, who had been to Guadalcanal, Iwo Jima, you name it, Tarawa, some of the most fierce battles in World War II. And I wanted to be like them. I wanted to be like my uncle and like my father. And I loved to fight. So it was a beautiful, beautiful marriage. And after serving in the Marine Corps for a year, I learned that they also valued fighting, drinking, eating, and fornicating. And I loved all that. I loved it. And again, I tried to be the best possible Marine I could be. They finally gave me my wish, and I went to Vietnam in June of 1966 as a combat engineer and served there for 13 months. Didn't see as much what I would call severe action as a lot of my colleagues and a lot of my friends, but we saw enough. And after that, I got stationed to Iwakuni, Japan, in a place I'm sure you're kind of familiar with. There was a Marine Corps Air Station there. And once again, I became a military police officer. So I had an out of jail free card. So my drinking, my fighting, my eating, I love Japanese food, anything and everything. You name it. Fast forward to, let's say, I don't want to tell you my whole life story. That would take about 18,000 hours. But fast forward to after I retired from Marine Corps in 1991. I did very well as a Marine. I got out of the Marine Corps in 1968 after returning to the United States, got married, had 2 children, wonderful wife, wonderful kids, wonderful life. I was a functional alcoholic, pretty much. I succeeded at everything I practically did. And when I didn't succeed and failed, it was only one of those things I was going to get there anyhow, one way or the other. That old attitude of never give up, never quit from the Marine Corps days was embedded in my brain housing group. And I kept moving. I went to college, got a degree, and then I was so bored in civilian life, it was no excitement at all. And if I got in fights, I'd go to jail. I didn't like that. And if I drank too much, I'd go to jail. I didn't like that either. So I decided I'm going back in the Marine Corps. So I applied for Officer Candidate School and got commissioned to second lieutenant in 1974 and finished up my career after Desert Shield and Desert Storm in 1991. So saw combat in 2 different wars, pretty much came out of those wars without any wounds or any serious injuries. But I was exposed to herbicidal poisoning in Vietnam. I went all over I Corps, the northern end of that country. And just about everywhere we went as an engineer had been sprayed with herbicidal poisoning, commonly called Agent Orange. And I didn't know anything about it. Didn't really care about it at that time. I was bulletproof. Who cares? A little bit of herbicide didn't hurt anybody. And that's what the American government told us. It's harmless. Don't worry about it. Until people started getting very sick and very ill. And then the government said, nah, that's all bullshit. The medical profession said, nah, No such thing as that. It's all in your head. Oh, it's something else. You're just getting old. Whatever. And then finally, after decades of fighting our own government, they accepted that yes, there are illnesses as a result of that. So when I retired in 1991, I went on to a second career in law enforcement in the educational institutional area in California. I became chief of police of a large community college. They have their own police departments, believe it or not. And I had a 14 police officer department that pretty much protected 36,000 students and staff and faculty. Very, very political in nature, extremely political. A high stress environment that I was not really accustomed to dealing with. And my drinking escalated, and a little frustrations occurred, just protecting my officers so they could do their job and not be influenced by politics or labor unions or anything like that. Very successful. I retired after that. Usually, chief of police in that kind of environment only lasts anywhere from 3 to 5 years. I lasted 20. So I must have been doing something well. After that, I retired in 2011. But before retiring in 2011, in 2009, I was diagnosed with prostate cancer, a presumptive illness of Agent Orange. And what a presumptive illness is that the Veterans Administration of the United States government has accepted that the probability of getting prostate cancer in Vietnam veterans was 34% higher than the average population. So they decided that was a presumptive illness. With that, I was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes. With that, my prostate cancer was relatively aggressive, and I decided to get a prostatectomy, which I did very successfully. Wonderful doctors. I did it through the robotics type of thing. Had some side effects, but those side effects were something that you expected. That was in 2009. I was age 62. So I'm getting up there in age, But 62, after I recovered from my surgery, I was out walking 12, 13 miles at a good pace. I was on what they call the HMR diet. I don't know if you've ever heard of that, but it's a low carb. It's all packaged foods, everything that you pay like $400 a month back then. And they send it to you, and that's all you eat. And I shed weight. I got down to my Marine Corps weight of 184 pounds, got back into 34-inch waist trousers. I was a 62-year-old fighting machine again. And I started hiking mountains. I started riding motorcycles. I started doing everything that really elevated that adrenaline again. Never, ever did I ever become unaddicted to adrenaline. I still am. And I'll tell you some stories about that. So, again, move forward. In 2011, I decided to retire from that law enforcement job. And I was diagnosed with another affliction called chronic lymphocytic leukemia. I went to a urologist and they took a blood test, and my white blood cell count was 12,000. And I believe the normal blood cell count of a healthy human being is between 4 and 10. I'm not sure exactly those numbers, but mine was high. So they sent me to a hematology oncologist, and that's when he diagnosed, yes, you have something called CLL, chronic lymphocytic leukemia. And then he told me, "You're lucky that it's CLL. Rarely does anybody die from this. It's a lifelong illness. You'll never get rid of it. But they have medications out now called targeted meds that put this under control, and you won't need to get on these meds probably for your entire life, because it looks like you've got a pretty low grade of this." So over the years, I would get my blood tested, and each year it would elevate until it got up to about 15,000. And then the next year it went down to 14,000. And it was like one of those things that would kind of percolating in the background, but it had no effect on me whatsoever until there's always an until, or there's always a but. Yeah. 2015. In 2015, my prostate cancer recurred. And my PSA started going up again. Up until then, it was nothing. And my urologist said, "Okay, it gives me the list of my options. I'm a in all or don't get in at all." So my idea was get rid of it, just get rid of it, and that's when I chose the prostatectomy, or the radiation treatment. So I had the prostatectomy in 2009, 10, 11, somewhere around there, 11, I believe. And so in 2015, I went in for 12 weeks of radiation treatment. And essentially, they lay you on a table. You have to fill up your bladder full with water. In other words, you have to drink until you can't drink anymore. And then they make sure your bladder is full. And then they have this beam that goes right down in between your legs where the prostate used to be. And that's where they radiate. And they make you fill your bladder up so you don't damage the bladder, or you have minimal damage to your bladder. They even gave me a tattoo where they were supposed to aim that beam, a little dot where they were supposed to. Kind of an interesting tattoo. But so I went through that, and they had to wait for a while to get the PSA back. But I had a motorcycle ride coming up. I wanted to ride to a place in New Mexico from California, a place called Angel Fire. That's where they have a Vietnam Veterans Memorial there. It's a very spiritual area. It's in the Sangre de Cristo Mountains, which is the Blood of Christ Mountains. A lot of Native Americans there think that's a very sacred location. And I was in a group of veterans that got very close to our Native American heritage. They accepted us into their family like we were born with them. It was just an honor. So I wanted to take my new wife, my second wife, on this ride with me because she's a veteran also. She's a retired Marine gunnery sergeant, 2-term drill instructor at Parris Island, one tough lady, and she keeps me in line. She keeps my addiction to adrenaline kind of at a low stage. So at this point, both of us sober, clean, no real commitments. But the doctor did suggest, you might want to reconsider this because your immune system has been compromised pretty significantly through everything that you've been through. Chronic lymphocytic leukemia, the radiation treatment, your type 2 diabetes. And I said, who cares about that? I'm okay. We'll just go ahead and cut to the quick. 6 days later, after our return from this 5-day motorcycle trip, very, very much inclement weather, I started having these severe headaches. My wife took me to the emergency room. They gave me a couple of Advil and said, go home and sleep it off. This was a hospital that I later recognized. It was out in the desert in East San Diego County. That the average person would go to this hospital and you'd get in line with everybody else. But if you paid them $25,000 a year to their foundation, you got first-rate medical treatment. And you got to the head of the line. And you got the private hospital areas and the best doctors. It's the first time I had ever heard of that here in America. That's strange. So 4 more trips back to that same ER, and they finally diagnosed that I had a mass in my left lung that's about the size of half my fist, and I had pneumonia, walking pneumonia. So I called my favorite doctor, the doctor that put me on the HR and the HMR program, got my type 2 diabetes. He was an endocrinologist. And I told him where I was at and what the diagnosis was. Actually, my wife did. I didn't. And he said, get the hell out of that county and get back into Orange County, California, and go to one of their hospitals. He says, you want to get down here to San Diego or Orange County, get in one of the best hospitals. So we went back down to San Diego. I got into University of California, San Diego. And I saw a doctor there, I can't remember the name of their doctor, but a lung doctor. And she said, well, we have to it looks like you got stage 4 lung cancer. And I'm going, whoa, that's interesting. Yeah, I'm a previous smoker. I used to chew tobacco also. I used to smoke cigars. Anything that made me happy, I did. Or I thought made me happy. So she said there's only one way that we're going to actually determine what that is take a biopsy. So they did. They went through my nose, down into my lung, took a biopsy, and it came back no cancer. It came back as an infection, but they couldn't. It was not a bacterial infection. It was closer to a fungal infection. Now, where we were riding in the desert of southwest United States, they have what's called desert fever, rabbit fever, that kind of stuff. And it's spores that you get into your lungs and causes an infection, a fungal infection. They couldn't actually isolate it to that, but that's what they thought it was. So she said, go ahead and go home, just relax, take it easy, eat properly, which is the standard American diet. And because HMR was not a continuous diet, I was just to lose the weight and get that type 2 diabetes under control. So I did. And 4 days later, I started coughing up massive amounts of blood. And after I coughed up all that blood in the sink, I'd fill up the sink. I felt great. And my wife looked in the sink and she went, high and to the right. She took off in the panic mode and says, oh, what the heck? She called the doctor who did the biopsy, and they said, get to the ER immediately. So that's when we went back to UC San Diego to the ER. Make a long story short, I was in the ER for a period of days, and the solution to this bleed in my left lung was to go through my femoral artery up through my chest into the lung. And they had this little tube that would shoot microscopic glass bulbs into that artery or the vein or whatever it was, and would embolize that bleed. They did that. The bleed stopped because I was watching all of this on a camera. I was just hyped up with fentanyl and all kinds of different drugs. And then they discovered, saw on the camera, there was another small bleed. So they went back out, went through again, and embolized that bleed. And at that point, everything went well. They pulled everything out. They started putting pressure on my femoral artery to make sure that it would clot properly. And at that, within about 5 minutes, I began spasming my legs to a point where I've never felt anything that intense before. It was extraordinary. If anybody would have gotten in front of my legs, I would have put my foot right through their chest. That's how hard I was kicking. Everything else was fine. And I said, "Hey, Doc, what's going on here?" And he looked at me and he says, "Nothing, don't be worrying about it. It's probably you've been laying down on your back for a long time." So they took me back to my room, recovery. I was knocked out with all the fentanyl. I could hardly even keep my eyes open. The next morning, I woke up about 8 hours later. My wife was there. The doctors were there. "How are you feeling?" "I'm feeling okay." I said, "Did I puke up any more blood?" No. It was everything was successful. And I looked at my wife. I said, "I can't feel my legs. I can't move." And they go, "What?" And they started poking me with needles. I was paralyzed from my breast down. I had no movement, no feeling, nothing. Suddenly, I had 9 doctors coming in. Everybody came in, neurologists, you name it, all different disciplines. The bottom line was, after a bunch of tests, scans, pictures, when they embolized that last bleed, something caused a spinal infarction, a spinal stroke on my T4 vertebra, and which is the thoracic vertebrae, and paralyzed me. So they came in with an experimental idea to elevate my blood pressure up to 180 to see if they could push out whatever was blocking my spine. No, they couldn't do that. After about 4 or 5 days of that, they gave up and they said, "Sorry, but you're permanently paralyzed." The doctor who performed this procedure, he came in after all of that, and he had tears in his eyes. He was an Air Force doctor that was working in the teaching school area of the university, and the student that was helping him came in also, and they kept saying how sorry they were. And I had friends who, before that doctor's visit, told me, "You're going to be a millionaire, Harry. Sue that place until they fall down." And you know, Dave, I just couldn't understand that. Why? What's going on here? Completely confused. Walked in there. He saved my life, but I walked in there very healthy almost. I mean, I considered myself healthy. I was still pretty dang strong. And I rolled out of that hospital and been rolling ever since. When the doc looked at me and I said, "Hey, Doc, I don't know what came over me. I think a spiritual experience occurred somewhere along this line, somewhere along this journey." But I looked at the doc and I just had so much compassion and sadness for him and for this young student. I said, "Doc, don't blame yourself." I said, "You're not God. You're a damn good doctor. You saved my life, and forever will I be grateful for that." This is a complex organism. You don't know everything about it. Don't blame yourself. He had performed hundreds of these before, and I was the only one that ever got paralyzed. And my wife looked at me and she held my hand. She leaned down and kissed me, and she had tears in her eyes. And I just couldn't see any other course of action. That doctor came back 4 more times, maybe 2 or 3 more times. I don't remember. But each time we talked about it, each time I kept telling him, don't blame yourself, doc. Press on. You're doing good work. I'll be fine. I'll be fine. I'm in God's hands. Every day is a gift. Every day is a gift. And I learned that from Vietnam, from Desert Storm, from all of the crap that I've been through. Each day you wake up, you better say thank you, because who knows? It'll happen like that in an instant. So fortunately, I got transferred from UC San Diego to the Veterans Administration Hospital in La Jolla, California. One beautiful place, one of the most spectacular spinal cord injury disease units in the entire country. And I went through 8 weeks of rehab, learned how to deal with my paralysis, fell in love with 38 beautiful, wonderful 24-hour nurses. These nurses were spectacular. They're angels. What they had to do to keep me just clean is something that people can't even imagine. I couldn't turn myself. I had to be turned every 2 hours, so I wouldn't get much sleep at night. They had to cath me. They had to do bowel management for me. They had to do everything. Through the rehabilitation, I had an occupational therapist, a recreational therapist, and a physical therapist. I lifted weights. I did everything that I could do. And before I got out of the hospital, my T4 spinal infarction was incomplete, which means that I had quite a bit of recovery. I was not a quadriplegic. I was not totally paralyzed. My right leg, I could begin moving my toe, and from there, I began moving my leg. My left leg, I still can't move it a lot, but I've got 85% recovery in my right leg. I've got about 34% recovery in my left leg. I can stand up. I was walking with a walker for a period of time. I can roll still. My upper body strength, even at age 78, I'm pretty doggone strong. I can, even when I weighed 122 kilos. I know you guys say kilos, so I switched over to that just for this interview, which is 277 pounds. Good grief. When I was in the Marine Corps back in the 60s, we were not politically correct. We called people that weight hog bodies, and I became a hog body. I didn't want to be a hog body. So at that point, after rehab, I was back down to 230. They didn't feed us well in the hospital. They fed us the standard American diet. And when I started being able to get outside the ward to go around the other hospital, I started in again with Cokes, Pepsis, chips, pizza, anything that I could buy. And the weight gradually started back. And okay, that kind of moves us forward. I couldn't ride motorcycles anymore. I couldn't do what we wanted to do in the desert of California. So I decided, let's move up close to my 2 sons and my grandkids. My wife and I bought a beautiful home up here in the Cascade Mountains, the foothills of the Cascades in Washington State. And we have a wonderful, wonderful 5-acre property here. Beautiful. And I have a 4-wheel drive off-road wheelchair that I got because I was a disabled veteran for free. The Veterans Association gives me a four-wheel drive or a regular wheelchair with all the bells and whistles on it. When you're 100% disabled veteran, they treat you pretty damn well. I have nothing to complain about. I'm so grateful for that. So many other countries don't have that. I served in Desert Storm with a British unit uh, from Great Britain, um, and got to become very good friends with several of them. Stayed in contact with them on Facebook and email, and one of them uh, had a back injury and they couldn't walk, and their government had nothing like that. They just went into the regular system, and they had to wait sometimes a year just to get an appointment. Um, I actually said, "Why don't you come over here to the United States?" I said, "Geez, you know, get your green card, and we'll get you signed up somehow." Good. Haven't heard from him in a while, so I hope he's okay. But the bottom line here is, um, why did I get on Carnivore? Well, because I went back up to be a hog body again. It's as simple as that. I I kind of lost my warrior spirit. When you wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning in a dark hospital room with four other veterans in the same room, hearing screams, terror nightmares from other veterans who have PTSD, quadriplegics that can't feed themselves. Um, I knew two other younger veterans who got injured in motorcycle accidents. They were both on active duty, and their wives, they couldn't handle it. They couldn't. They couldn't see a future in staying married. Both of them, their wives walked away. My wife, I gave her the opportunity to do that, and she looked at me and slapped me upside the head like a good gunnery sergeant would do, and say, "Stop that talk." Um, so I'm very blessed, very blessed. I started Carnivore, like I said, 95 days ago, and here's here's my numbers. Um, my A1C was 10.5, pretty dang high, out of control. I was taking 35 units of long-term insulin daily. My weight, 125 kilos, 125. Um, I was I was just not in good health. My spirit was low. I was kind of depressed every other day. I didn't really know what I had to live for, although I had a beautiful life, but I couldn't do what I wanted to do: ride motorcycles, climb trees, hike mountains. I did stuff. I took up leather crafting and became expert at that. I make holsters and knife sheaths and all kinds of stuff. Never charged anybody anything. I just figured this is my gift back for what I've earned and gained. I do wood whittling, make little roosters and little animals and give them away to kids. And for some reason, women love to get a little rooster with a hen with little chicks carved in wood, sitting on a little stick. Oh my gosh! Wish I'd have learned how to do that as a young man. I'd have been real successful. Um, but the bottom line was, I love YouTube. I still look at a lot of YouTube, and I came across a YouTube video, and I don't know how it came up on my screen. Uh, Laura Laura Spath. She and her husband, Chris. I don't know if you've ever heard of Chris's story. Both were overweight. Chris had type 2 diabetes, and he contracted a flesh-eating bacteria that nearly killed him. And they decided to go on carnivore, and I mean, it was like magic to watch them over there. And I just followed one of their videos after the other, and I said, "Whoa, what is this all about?" And uh, and then, of course, Dr. Jason Fung. Dr. Jason, he said, "Hey, you can reverse type 2 diabetes." First time I've ever heard that in my life. No doctor has ever told me that. None. They kept wanting to do more and more drugs. The last doctor I saw was 2 years ago when my A1C was 8. Um, she referred me to another endocrinologist, and all they wanted to do was put me on Ozempic. Period. That'll solve your problem. And so I left that and never went back. I said, well, thank, I'll consider it. And I left, and I don't know. So much for that. And then, of course, all the rest of the people. You came up. I've listened to so many of your videos. And like I said before, your most recent one, inspirational. A lot of, we have a lot in common. Um, Ken Berry, Eric Westman, Steak and Butter Girl. She makes me smile. Dr. Tony Hampton, uh, probably a doctor you haven't heard too much about. Suned Hand, H-A-N-D. He's kind of a rebel. He's really in favor of changing the American diet. And then, of course, Sean Baker and Anthony Chaffee. And when my wife first heard I was going on this diet, she thought I was absolutely nuts. She thought I was, there's no hope for you. Until she saw Anthony Chaffee and Sean Baker, and she says, if you look like them after the carnivore diet, you're up, you're good. So I finally got her approval. I'm still working on it, though. But so 95 days. I just had a new A1C, a new weigh-in. 85 days later. A1C is now 6.7, 111 kilos. I lost 30 pounds. Yeah. What about cholesterol? I was on a statin also. Cholesterol, 127. Triglycerides, 120. HDL, 41. LDL, 67. You know something? I said, that's the last of the statins. I'm not taking them anymore. When my cardiologist, I have AFib also, the AFib that pulls blood in that little appendix on the top of the heart. And they have a procedure now where they go through the femoral artery up into the heart again, and they put some kind of shield there, and that significantly reduces the potential of a stroke or a heart attack. I've been on Eliquis, which is Apixaban. It's a blood thinner. It's a pretty safe blood thinner. It's working for me, and I told my doc, no more going through my arteries on any of this stuff. I'm the shit happens guy. You know, hundreds of people before me, I get paralyzed. Shit happens to me. I don't want any more shit happening. So, and for my my chronic lymphocytic leukemia, they put me on this medication called Calquence. And I'll say the generic name, acalabrutinib mal, M-A-L. It's a targeted medication specifically that attacks the chronic lymphocytic leukemia cells and destroys them, and thus reduces the white blood cells. My white blood cell count now is down to 10,000 again. This medication has worked wonders. So, although I'm not a medication guy, modern medical meds do have a place in our lives. This medication, unfortunately, cost $15,000 a month. Yes, 15,000 American dollars every month.
Is it like an infusion type of thing?
No, it's an oral medication. It's a pill. I take one in the morning. Every 12 hours, I take one. It has virtually, my chronic lymphocytic leukemia will never kill me. Never say never. I've always heard that. But if the probability of it, it has gone down to the point where it's almost normal. Now, how do I pay for that? Thank goodness I got excellent insurance from when I was a law enforcement officer, and also the VA. The VA. Thank you, taxpayers. Thank you, taxpayers. The commitment that I made to keep our freedom is being repaid in spades by keeping me alive as long as I am. And I am so grateful, so grateful. Once again, every day is a gift, Dave. That's it. That's pretty much my story. I'm going to be carnivore until I go up to meet St. Peter, the gates of heaven, where the United States Marines are guarding that, and will check my ID to make sure they get me in. I'm a carnivore addict now. I love it. My energy level has increased. I no longer have brain fog like a lot of people say. My sleep at night is magnificent. My attitude towards any kind of challenge during the day is let's meet it head on or let's do it differently. And when I get into arguments, I know when to keep my mouth shut. That's big for me because I still love to fight. And a good argument with my wife is a good fight. Two Marines going to fight together over some stupid thing in life, we can do that for days. But when I keep my mouth shut and she says, let's restart our day, we push each other on the nose like it's a reset button on a computer. Let's just restart it today. Let's forget what we were just talking about and arguing about, and let's go have a beautiful day out on the back. Watch our three pups run around the 5 acres and have a cup of coffee. I still drink coffee. I love coffee. But so far it hasn't hurt my carnivore. But that's all I do.
Yeah.
Nothing else. And I'm not going to ever slip. When I say that, you can bank on it.
It's really interesting to hear you talk about that biting the tongue part of it. I think that was a thing for me as well. Like it's almost like you're now in a position where you can kind of more objectively look at a situation and go, I'm not doing myself any favors here by talking more.
Yeah, there's only one person in this world that I can change, me. And I listened to one of your videos, one of your guests, and he says the longest space is that 6 inches between our two ears. You know, when I stop hearing what she's saying and what I think she's saying, and it's an attack on me, my big ego, just keep my mouth shut because I can edge God out real quick, real quick. That's what ego is, edging God out. And if I suddenly think that she's the enemy, which I can put just about anybody in that position, and not my love, the fight's on. But if, one of my close friends says, the most spiritual thing you can do, Harry, is to keep your effing mouth shut. And I've learned from that. It's so much better to wake up with a good attitude than a bad attitude. And I look forward to waking up now. I look forward to seeing my grandkids. There's a lot of things that I have to be grateful for. And as long as I look at my gratitude list, everything else just melts away. Um, so that's where I'm at today, Dave. It's a good day.
So, what is the status now that your A1C's dropped so much? Are you still taking insulin? Have you been able to kind of moderate that?
When I went in to see my doctor, my general practitioner, this last time, which was on the 85th day, that's when I got all these tests back. I'm now on day 95. Um, she looked at me and she said, wow, everything's looking great. What happened? And I told her I'm on the carnivore diet and this is what I'm eating. And I, I, I'm going to stop taking insulin. I think insulin is no longer needed. If it is, um, I'll wean myself off of it. But she says, you're the CEO of your own life, Harry. I work for you. And if you want to go off insulin, go off of it. What I'll do though is if you see your daily blood glucose go up and it continues to rise, you'll have the prescription. I'll renew the prescription and we'll continue having your prescription renewed. So it'll always be available to you. You can always go back on it. But I've gone off that daily injection now for the last 10 days. And my blood glucose is remaining the same every day. It's between 106 and sometimes it gets up to 130 when I take it early in the morning. It's got that dawn effect that everybody talks about. But throughout the day, it evens out. It doesn't get above 150. It hasn't been even close to 150 since my last 10 days. And I'm no longer taking the statin. I'm taking the blood thinner and my chronic lymphocytic leukemia med, and that's it. And also element. I take one element. I love that stuff.
Oh, nice. So, what's your menu like day to day?
Well, today I had 4 eggs, um, 8 slices of bacon. My wife smoked a chicken yesterday. We love barbecue chicken, smoked chicken. Um, and she only used ghee as the rub. She did put a little bit of rosemary on it. Rosemary and chicken is very good, but not much. Fresh rosemary. And I ate after putting the wings and a small portion of just about 1/4 of a breast into my air fryer to crisp it up. I ate that. So that's what I've had today. I usually have a small plate of what is it? Pork rinds, little pork rinds, with um, some salt, some of the Redmond's sea salt, and that's just kind of my dessert, my snack. And then of course I have 1 cup of coffee in the morning, which is black. Sometimes, well, most of the time a little bit of half and half. Sometimes black, and 1 coffee in the afternoon. Today at 2:30, before I came on to visit with you, I had a cup of coffee with some half and half in it, and that's it. Beef, I eat steaks, hamburger. I love hamburger, just fried in tallow or its own fat, 80/20, and then I drain the rendered fat. I heard that. I think it was from Laura's Bath. I'm not sure. But rendered fat has a tendency to cause diarrhea. And I've had several bouts of that. And being a paraplegic with a neurogenic bowel and a neurogenic bladder, which means I have no control over it at all, that's not a pretty picture. Um, so I try to manage that as best I can. I do sleep on pads, so if I do have an accident at night, I don't even know about it. Wake up in the morning, it's easy clean up. I have a roll-in shower. Everything's been um, disabled approved in my house and all that, which the VA did. Came in and did the whole thing. But the bottom line is, I love beef. I love steak. I've always loved it. I love pork. When I was a kid, growing up back in Pennsylvania, I used to hunt rabbit, pheasant, squirrel. They have groundhogs back there, woodchucks that is their real name. Groundhogs, all they eat is clover. People say, "You eat groundhog?" Oh my God. My grandmother used to make Hassenpfeffer, a German rabbit stew out of groundhog meat. Much better, much better. We ate that because, again, we were a poor family. Uh, my dad used to bring home entire beef hearts because they were cheap. Beef liver. I love liver. I could eat it every day. My wife though, the smell of it will turn her. She'll take off for a week and won't come back. So I have to be careful when I cook liver. It has to be outside. Um, Liverwurst. You get some good clean liverwurst. Some of it has some stuff in it, but it's so minor, and I only eat a slice of it. Um, and so far it hasn't had any impact on me. So anything and everything when it comes to having a face, I'll eat it. No veggies, although I love veggies. My wife has a garden here that'll just turn your face red. And corn on the cob, oh my gosh. But I don't miss any of that. I don't miss any of the problems that it used to give me. Aches and pains, weight. Um, that's another thing. Most of my arthritis has subsided to a point where it's no longer a factor. I mean, I could never do this. And being a leather crafter and a whittler, those are important. So I also do a lot of shotgunning. I like to shoot clay pigeons. I don't hunt anymore, but I do fish. There's good fishing up here, lots of salmon, lots of steelhead trout. So anytime I can get fresh salmon, I love sardines, all of the good stuff, the fatty fish. You put it on my plate and it's gone. And it's so satiating. I mean, I eat one meal a day between the hours of 11 o'clock and 2 in the afternoon. Sometimes I might go until 4, but that period of time is when I eat. Um, I stay away from dairy except for real butter and ghee. I still have that. Dairy has a tendency to give me some loose stools, so I recognize that. I'll stay away from that. So just through uh, testing this and doing that and what works and what doesn't, I've learned how to eat very well, proper human diet. And I cannot tell you how much better I feel. I might
And
kick the bucket tomorrow, but by God, if today's good.
mm, so your wife she saw Anthony Chafee and Sean Baker and went, okay, well, obviously they're doing all right, so yeah, it's okay for you too. Has she been convinced to do it?
No, but my ex-wife, who doesn't live too far from us, and we've got a very good relationship, she's on it. Both my sons are on it. I have a son that's 52 and the other one's 49. The one that's 52 lost 30 pounds. His blood pressure went down. His testosterone elevated to a point where he feels like a new man now. My youngest son, he just went on it a couple of days ago, and he keeps not keeps, but he said, "Well, if I run out of money to buy steaks, will you help me?" I said, "Heck yeah, I'll buy you a steak." Yeah, you can come on over and help me with some yard work. That'll pay for that steak. Um, and my wife, Sally, she is in great shape. She's younger than I am. She's 66. Um, she does as much work as most guys I've known, 10 guys I've known. She is a worker. She's strong, although she's 90% disabled because she had a back injury during her service time. Um, and when she was in the Marine Corps, they made her wear male boots to march in. They didn't have female boots then when she served. So she has some feet problems associated with her disability. But no, she's Scotch, Irish, German, Swiss, and she loves her pastries. And when she buys pastries and chocolate and candy and ice cream, I love watching her eat it. I have no cravings whatsoever for it. It's just not part of me anymore. I I don't even ask.
Mm.
She'll ask me, "Could you get me an ice cream bar?" Sure. I bring it to her and I go watch a YouTube video.
It's so nice to be at that point where you don't have the emotional connection to those foods anymore, right?
You know, um, I have an addictive personality. I recognize that. I've lived long enough to recognize that. When I get addicted to something, it's addicted physically, mentally, emotionally. And if I'm not spiritually fit, spirituality doesn't give a crap. So, yes, it's so wonderful to be free from the physical addiction, the emotional addiction, and the mental addiction that I've always had with things that I want, when I want them, and how much I want. And it's taken me a lifetime to recognize that I was the problem. It's not the doctors. It's not the American diet. I am. I'm the problem. If I can convince myself not to do that, what I now know is not healthy for me or for my life or for my loved ones and my grandkids, I set that example. I don't need to go out and yell at the top of my lungs on the top of a mountain, carnivore diet. I mean, if people ask me, and I've got lots of friends, I just went to a gathering of old guys, and I told them about the carnivore diet. And, well, you can edit this out if you want, but I said, yeah, look, all of these things have gotten better. I'm waiting to get an erection. And they laughed. Oh my God, they laughed. And one of them, who's 82 years old, looked at me and says, I don't think that's going to happen, Harry. So, well, and he's probably right. There's some things the carnivore diet's not going to solve, which I recognize. But living in the now, Dave, living in reality and not my own delusion. Sure, there's a lot of misinformation out there, a lot of lies, but it's not just about our diet. I mean, our American government has been lying to us for the last 4 years, and there continues to be lies that we recognize over the history of our nation that have been put into textbooks. And there's a saying here, whoever's in power determines what the history will be. I take that literally. Power is the ultimate addiction. And the only power I need right now is the Lord Jesus Christ, our Savior, and to recognize that I'm not God anymore and I'm powerless. and I need help. And you're the kind of guy that I'll call if I need help because you've been there. Or Dr. Barry, when I see his live, I'll ask a question. And I take his word for being accurate. It may be only what he knows now, which may change tomorrow. Who knows? But he's being truthful. And that is what I respect: truth, integrity, and being honest with myself. You have to be honest with yourself. To thy own self be true. I love it. And I try to live my day every day that way. Do I succeed all the time? Nope. I'm not perfect. I practice. I practice. The only one that's perfect walked this earth many, many years ago and sacrificed his life for ours. So I don't see perfection as an objective that I'll ever achieve here on this plane of existence, but I'm damn well trying. I'm practicing it. I'm taking one step, one day at a time.
Nice. So, Harry, if people want to reach out to you, do you have any way of getting in contact?
Sure. My easiest way would be my email address. Well, before we get to the email address, I'm on Facebook. My Facebook, Harry Parmer, Parmer. And I'll go ahead and give you my email address. It's Harley Ryder, HarleyRider, FLSTF at gmail.com. FLF as in Foxtrot, T as in Tom, S as in Sierra. That's a Harley Davidson Fat Boy motorcycle. That was my first motorcycle. Rode cross country 4 times on that thing.
Oh, nice.
What an
Nice.
experience.
Yeah. No worries. Well, I'll link to your Facebook and your Gmail in the show notes. Harry, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story. I really appreciate your time.
Well, my time is as much time as you want, Dave. I really appreciate the opportunity and thank you. Thank you for your other guests who put themselves out here also. And thank you for what you do, Dave. Godspeed.